You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers about hikers for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for coming back to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Now, you'll know, obviously, from the lack of British accent that I am not Mighty Blue. If you've missed our last few episodes, my name is Ryan Hopkins, or JR, on the trail. And while Steve is on a bit of a sabbatical, I think that's what we're calling it. Yeah, sabbatical. I will be hosting the show in his absence. But don't worry, Steve will still be hosting one show a month. And you'll also hear from him later in the show when he catches up with Katie Westling or Phoenix on her thru-hike attempt. I'm just going to be doing the interview portion. So, really excited about today's guest, Cass Bridges, or Nova, on the trail. Thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail last year, and I followed her journey online, and I was really inspired with so many aspects of her hike, and she'll touch on a lot of those. But she had a really early start date, and I just really appreciated her thoughtfulness and just her whole view on the Appalachian Trail, long-distance backpacking, and just people in general. It was really fantastic. So without any further ado, here is Nova. All right, now let's meet a member of the class of 2020, Cass Bridges, or Nova. How are you today, Nova?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thanks so much for making time today. I think the best place to start is just your trail name, Nova, if you want to share more about how you got it and why it stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been hiking, and I had a lot of people, as you initially start, people try and give you your trail names. And I had some pretty good confidence in denying people the ability to do that. Somebody tried to name me Slippy, and the Cascade was a good contender. But I had hiked over into the Roan Highlands, and I got to the station at 19E. I'd kind of come over, and there's a guy that was following me in there, and they gave me a place to stay. They kind of saw that I was a little uncomfortable and offered a place, and I ended up staying a little later than I would have that morning, just sitting down, drinking coffee. And there was a gentleman that worked there. He had a strong New York accent, and he kept telling me, "You have good cojones, and for doing this, And he told me, you have a personality, a very bright personality. It's like a Nova." And I kind of took it from there. It's like I really liked that. I felt it was very encompassing of like a characteristic. And I just wanted to run with that more than any other trail name that was suggested. And
you said the first one was Slippy?
Slippy. I ate it in the Smokies.
Oh, gosh.
Pretty hard. I, just Superman dove. And they're like, "I'm going to name you Slippy." I was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I'm glad that one didn't stick then.
Me too. I'm very happy about that.
So you mentioned the Smokies. So I know, I followed your hike last year, and I know you had a very unique start date of February 1st, right?
I did, yes.
So can you just share more like what it was like starting so early and like what you encountered as far as the weather or other hikers?
Absolutely. So when I first started, obviously I was prepared. I had a huge pack. It looked abnormally large on my back. But I was well aware of the weather that could come my way, and I wanted to be as prepared for it as I could. I was number 66 to start.
Oh, wow.
And it was fun. That first couple miles, there's so many people. And, I found out I was actually pretty quick for a person that just started. And it was very interesting because when I first started, it was foggy, it was cold, slightly rainy. And I was like, man, it's really warm for February. And then I got to Tray Mountain, and there was like 1.5 feet, 2 feet of snow. And it was cold. It was horribly cold. And then when I got up into the Smokies, like by that time, so many people would get off at road gaps and just go into hostels just to be safe, which is smart of them. But, I was prepared. I had gaiters. I had soft shell pants. I had a hard shell jacket, lots of layers. I was really prepared for it. And so going on from newfound down to standing bear, I was in like three feet of snow. Snow drifts were really high.
Oh my gosh.
It was -5 degrees. And I was by myself. I was post-holing it, which is always kind of like a good and bad thing. You know, you don't want to have to be the first people to step your foot in, but I have a long gait. So to be able to do that, it made it a lot easier. And it was probably one of the cooler things I've ever done, is just seeing that and being so desolate and so alone out in those woods in that type of weather. It's a very unique experience.
Yeah, I did some hiking in Georgia this past December when it had snowed. And the thing that really surprised me, one, is when you're the first one out there, right? And you're making your own kind of post holes in the snow.
Right.
Just how quiet everything is. And then I remember seeing a ton of animal tracks in the snow.
Oh yeah, you can see the bunny tracks.
Yeah, and you lose that when there's no snow, obviously. So, you mentioned other folks getting off and going into hostels. Were you mainly staying in shelters? Were you in a tent? What was your sleep situation when you were out there?
I shelter hopped. I was alone. I know it's not technically etiquette, but if it was just me by myself, I would set up my tent and just kind of using it as a drape to prevent weather from getting in. The very few times that I had in those first couple months where I was pretty much like alone, that anybody would come into the shelter, I'd take it straight down. It's just like the courteous thing to do. And so that's mostly what I did. Very few times did I tent. But when I did, I just kind of stepped on the snow, packed it, put my tent up, and those were cool experiences as well. Because usually those were like places that had like those stellar views, just a couple miles past the shelters.
Right. Was there any gear? You mentioned the gaiters. Was there any gear that was kind of like non-negotiable for you to have in that kind of cold weather?
My Western mountaineering 10-degree bag, my Versalite, is my baby. I love that piece of gear to death. It has saved my ass so much. I was so cozy, and I'm already I move quickest in the cold. My body very much, when I'm hiking or doing anything athletic, cold is my zone. And so when I sleep, I sleep warm even, and that just helped insulate everything. That was like a non-negotiable in that type of weather. Gaiters I probably could have done without them. It would have been uncomfortable, but definitely in some of that snow, since it's not like powdery and it just packs like ice around your ankles, that was certainly, and of course my darn toughs. Darn toughs are an absolute must.
Of course. So when we spoke before, you mentioned your connection to the trail in Georgia, since that's where you lived. Can you share more about how you first heard about the trail?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was actually working with a family. They were very outdoorsy, and they brought me along for their trips often when I was caretaking for them. And I remember seeing my first white blaze outside of Standing Indian on a road gap. And I have this dorky picture of me like cheesing real hard next to it. I was so excited. And then they introduced me that it wasn't as far as I thought it was. They introduced me to mountain crossings, and I actually met some people up there, and I started working up there just in the register. They like to employ through hikers, and I was just helping restock and clean and maintain the building. And that was a saving grace in some capacity, just to be around the culture. And it was really addicting as well, just to see these people come in with such high spirits, or maybe even like brokenhearted, but just seeing that range of emotion from something was really powerful. It made me so eager. And also it was kind of that excitement where it terrifies you, but in the best kind of way. And to see these people come in and see what kind of gear they carried, where I was like, maybe that's not such a good idea. Maybe that is, or that's smart. And then being around people that have thru hiked, it was awesome to get their advice, their input, and collectively kind of put together from there forward what was the best means of like gear and leading, and what I wanted to do for my thru hike personally.
Yeah, I love that. And that's one of the main reasons that I wanted to chat with you. I mean, working at mountain crossings is such a unique opportunity. And I've always been a fan of mountain crossings, just like where they're located, the history of it, the fact that it's, the only building that the trail really technically goes through.
It's so much history and so much. If those walls could speak, I mean, they would tell some wild stories. And Georgiana and Logan, who own it, they're they're nothing short of absolutely amazing. They gave me so much guidance and help, and I've watched them and how they tend to care for other people. And their dry and straightforward tactics. I'm very all about being straightforward and like cutthroat about it. And I like that. And they did the same to me, and I would expect nothing less. And anybody that wants to go get gear, I suggest going there. I mean, they can fit a pack like no other. Bill, who works up there and still works up there, is a whiz with packs. I have heard stories all the way up to Vermont and Maine of people that are like, I went through mountain crossings and Bill fit my pack, and it's been great ever since, and stuff like that.
That's so cool. Do you have any like specific memories of just like really outrageous items people packed in?
There's a Polaroid, I believe, of a guy that had a Coleman stove somewhere in the building. There's a rebar, like I don't even know, like a 8 to 10 pound rebar that someone carried to apparently distribute the weight between their legs and their arms. It's somewhere in there.
Wow, that's a first. I've always heard of like axes and hatchets and like all kinds of stuff like that.
If those bushcrafters came in, they would carry an axe, a revolver, all the above, everything. I have seen machetes. I've seen hatchets, and places that you need to start a fire, you can usually find everything you need to do just that.
I always enjoy that. People, obsess over grams or certain weights sometimes, and then to see people come through with like a full blown like hatchet or like axe, I just love that. I used to think it was like ridiculous, and now it's more of like, kudos to you, bud. If you can carry that, I got nothing but respect for you. Right on. Yeah. Well, like I said, I love the connection to mountain crossings, and something that, it's emotional for some people just crossing through there normally because it's so historic. So what was that like for you when you started your thru-hike attempt and you made it to mountain crossings, proper, not too far in? Right. What did that feel like?
So, you'd asked about the weather. It was always rain front, warm, and snow. So I was getting over Blood Mountain, and I remember all I was thinking about was, I just want a cold root beer. It was a warm day. The sun was shining. It was stunning. It was beautiful. I had worn my shorts, and I was just coming down the mountain. And I remember coming down and finally hitting the spot where I could just barely see the road as you're going down. There's no foliage, so everything I could see pretty far ahead of me. And I remember hearing the wind chimes, and it almost made me, it hurt my heart a little bit. I have so many memories sitting around that building, whether it be outside with other thru-hikers, with my coworkers, with friends, family, and I remember I came out there, their doors were open, the wind chimes were just going. I remember Bill and Sam were standing outside, which was a coworker of mine, and they were there to welcome me. And Bill said, "Well, hey there, girl." And I was like, "All I want, Bill, please give me a root beer." That's all I want. And it was just, I sat inside, sat next to them. He was like, "Girl, you stink." I was like, "I sure hope I do." It's been 3 days.
That's so awesome. I love that. So thinking about the time, you were kind of preparing for your hike, and, was there ever a moment where things just kind of set in, like that you were really out there doing it,
I started, and I remember saying goodbye to all my family and friends that had come out there. And I remember I was 7 miles in, and I sat down and I cried, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I was like, I left a job, I left a relationship, I left my dog, I left my family, my friends, everything that was comfortable and going so great and was so cozy. I left, and I was like, holy shit, I'm actually out here doing this. Oh my gosh, what am I doing to go and walk in the woods for 6 months? And looking back at it now, I think it's 5 months, 6 days or something like that collectively. And it just feels like a speck in the grand scheme of things. But that 7 miles in was heavy on my feet and even heavier on my heart.
Wow. You hear those stories of whether it be a couple miles in or a few hundred miles in. And I think that's so special.
Right.
I'd love to hear more. We mentioned this a little bit when we last spoke, just your philosophy on the trail and hiking, whether it be through hiking or section hiking, and maybe how that's evolved after you've completed your hike.
I I get asked a lot now, and even while I was on trail, like, what's your favorite part? And it's the company. It's the company. The company is stellar. I would do everything I could just to go back and be in that same mindset and mentality with those people. And I have met some of the most amazing people on trail that got off. And, I've kept in contact with a couple of them, and they've gotten everything that they could ever wanted, from whether it be 600 miles or the whole thing. You were a person with a pack on your back, walking the same trail. Your feet touch the same path. You walk by the same blazes, and whether or not you finish it, that trail gives you something, and that mindset gives you something that is kind of hard to put into words. I think that there's a lot of people that are like, oh, well, you quit, you did this. No, you tried, and that's a lot more than most people do. And I don't know many people that would brave that. And, and maybe they got off for their own reasons, but they put themselves out there, and that's brave in and of itself.
I think that's so great. I mean, I feel pretty similar. People come to the trail for a variety of reasons, right. And whether it's a day hike or a through hike or something in between, it's what they needed and what was, good for them in the moment. And I think just it's hard not to root for that, no matter what the mileage is.
Right. And I think that, like I said, it's so incredibly brave. And I think that people don't get enough credit for those that have sectioned it and have put themselves out there enough to get uncomfortable. Because that's a very specific place to be. And it's not always the best time, but it is the time where you grow the most.
That's a great point. Now, we talked quite a bit about, you spending a lot of time, obviously, in North Georgia, being from that area. Mm-hmm. So what was it like once you finally got to new territory on the trail that you weren't familiar with?
Oh, it hurt. From about Springer to Damascus, I had all of these memories with these friends and these people in my life who are still great friends today. And I remember walking by these sections and taking pictures and sending them to my friends and just reminiscing in all of those wonderful times around a campfire or next to a water source, or just all of those memories. And I remember once I stepped past Damascus, it felt like a different layer of uncomfortable. It was like, wow, this is new. Like, this is everything from here on. I will not know what to expect. And that, of course, made me a little nervous in regard to especially like the weather and stuff like that. But it was also that same, oh, but I'm excited. I'm very excited about it.
And that's so great. And that first portion of your hike, you were alone quite a bit.
Yeah, for 2
starting
months,
so early.
Yeah,
2 months alone. Holy cow. And then that changing, as you met other hikers throughout your hike. Do you have any hikers you met or tramily that were really important to you on your journey?
So my tramily consisted of me, Blue Jeans, Mango, Food Sack, and Rocksteady. And all of them I very much love and appreciate. But I particularly got close to Mango and Blue Jeans. And Mango especially has become a very special person in my life and holds a very special place in my heart. I'm a firm believer that soulmates are not always romantic partners. And I believe that, like, when I met him, it felt like a piece of me found itself in a way.
Yeah.
It was very strange because the day I met him, he had actually been picked up from the trail a couple miles back. It was brought to the hostel. So when we separated, I cried that first day that I met him, and it was strange, but it just felt like weird having to say goodbye to somebody like that when you feel like that special kind of connection.
Of course. Wow. So how far did you all hike together?
So with Mango, I hiked probably, I couldn't specifically say the mileage, but I know it was from Dragon's Tooth, or no, it was from Maryland to Manchester, Vermont. And then I hiked from Dragon's Tooth till the end with Blue Jeans.
Gotcha. So a pretty good chunk of time.
Yes. Fortunately, I am so happy I met them when I did. I didn't realize how much the experience changed, because when I think about those first 2 months on trail, it's very different from the remainder of the time that I spent It was a lot more like I gained a lot of personal perspective on the trail in general, but that last half, that company helped progress that in a different way with their ideas and their personality. Because all you are is raw out there. You got your pack on your back, and you're moving forward just the same. Doesn't matter who you are off trail, and it doesn't really matter who you are on trail. You're you, and you either accept that or you don't. And obviously, as a trail family, we accepted that, and that allowed us to be open with each other in a way that I don't think you can until you know someone for years. And that's what it felt like. It felt like these were a group of people I'd known for all my life.
And that's such a special thing that the trail has the power to do. One thing that I've always enjoyed about being out there is, people don't ask you, what you do
Right.
or what your profession is or anything. You get that kind of stripped down version of yourself, and everyone is just like so eager to just talk about almost like the human experience, So that's just, I love those kind of stories.
And I love seeing people that, you hike with them and all they want for you is to finish or to get what you need to get out of that experience.
Yeah. Now, something that I think, and for me, the trail is very visual, I guess. Mm-hmm. And we had a guest from the ATC a couple of weeks back on the show that used a term that really stuck with me and called it, the trail is a collective hallucination. We all have these vivid memories of our time there or in certain ways. So are there any vivid moments on the trail that really stick out in your mind when you think back on it?
Yeah, I remember getting to Manchester, Vermont, and me and Blue Jeans had actually hiked further to get to a road crossing on the trail where Mango, Food Sack, and Rock went down a side trail 4 or 5 miles back. They were just ready to be done for the day, and we were just we want to get a couple more miles in. I remember we got picked up by a guy named Kit, which was Mango's high school friend. Wonderful gentleman, picked us up, brought us to a beautiful house. We got to hang out in a ski town. He bought us food, so he was, of course, our best friend. And I remember that following day, we were getting ready to leave and go back up to the trail. And I remember we were all outside where our packs were, putting everything back together, getting our resupply back together, putting our laundry back in our bags, all of the above. And we were listening to music, and it was just some random playlist. I wish I knew the song that was playing, but I was dancing around, and Mango kind of caught eye of that and grabbed me, and we just started dancing. And everyone was still packing up their things, and it was us, and he was just spinning me around and having a good time. And we got back out to the trailheads. We dropped them off first, and I said her goodbye. Hugged them, said, "We'll see you later." Got back on trail, and by the end of that day, I was 20 miles ahead of him.
Oh,
and
wow.
I never saw him again as a hiking partner on trail. But you always say we, even if you're ahead, even if they're 5 miles, 100 miles, it's always us. We are on trail because our feet are still touching that same path. It's like a vein, and you can feel it as a heartbeat on it. And they were all a part of that experience to the very end.
That's so special. And have you been able to still stay in touch with them or connect with them after?
Yeah. Me and Mango talk once a week. I keep up with Blue Jeans. We talk all the time. And I still keep up with Food Sack and Rock as best as I can. Food Sack is a hard person to get a hold of, but he'll talk every now and then. And Rock is actually trying to write a book. And so I keep up with him as he's trying to do that.
That's so great.
There was another memory that I actually thought of as well.
Yeah, of course.
I remember my parents were terribly against me hiking the trail. They're like, "Cass, why don't you just go do something else?" I'm like, I see a mountain. I don't think it's beautiful. I say I want to be on top of that. I want to go climb it. So no matter where I'm going, it's not going to be a smart decision in their perspective. I remember right before I got to Max Patch, there was just a series of balds. And I remember I had enough service, and I FaceTime my dad. And I remember I showed him the view, even from, a phone's perspective, just the look on his face and his reaction. It was the moment where I realized that he got it. He got the experience of why I was out there. Yeah. And I really, his only words that he said to me was, just don't get complacent. And I think he realized that was far
Wow.
from complacency, seeing things like that and doing something like that. And those are two very vivid memories, obviously with starting and summiting, being up there too. But those are really special moments in my book of like, that just tug on my heart a little bit.
That is so special. Thank you for sharing. Sometimes those things are views, sometimes they're bad days, sometimes they're good days, and sometimes they're, with other hikers, which is usually the case. That's fantastic.
Right.
So I would love to hear, something that I'm always fascinated by is how hikers kind of change throughout their journey, right? So I would love to just hear like how kind of your own identities changed throughout your hike, and how did you, if you could look back to yourself, Nova at Springer Mountain versus Nova at top of Katahdin, like what changed?
Wow, that's a good question. I think I've always been as a person pretty rooted in who I am. I'm a pretty hard-headed person, but there's a lot that I don't think people realize. Even if you've worked through your traumas, your circumstances, your ideas, your beliefs, you will be faced head on with them, because all you have to do out there is think. You are in your head so much. And I remember at one point in the trail, I was shown, I believe Blue Jean showed me it. And it was a quote, and it stuck with me so hard. And even today, I still very much think about it. And it's empathy without boundaries is self-destructive. And it hit me hard, and it kind of stirred up some thoughts in my head about acceptance. And I think the person that I was when I started wasn't a very accepting person of who I was and what I wanted to be. And I think accepting the trail name Nova was accepting that somebody believed I was maybe a special person, or I had a life, or maybe they believed that at least for themselves. And it was a start of a deeper type of healing of I accept who I am. I don't just believe I am a good person, or I look a certain way, or anything like that. I accept the circumstances that have happened, and I find a means of a solution in a different way. And the trail taught me that. I accept that it's shit weather, and I'm going to have a solution by putting one foot in front of the other. And that hit me a lot harder than I think just about anything was that.
And that level of self-growth and, maturity, you can't really get that in a classroom, right? I mean, that's one of the most powerful things about being out there.
You're nothing out there. And those mountains are brutal. And, I will say that, and I will be the example of its undertaking, but at the same time, I miss it. It takes you by surprise. Some days you sit down, and I there are plenty of times where I barely fell, and I thought I hurt myself, or, maybe I got angry at something so trivial, like my trekking pole getting stuck in the ground. It's annoying. And maybe I'd just sit down and cry for a minute. But at the end of the day, I lace my boots up, I put my pack on, and I move forward. Because moving back for me, at least, wasn't an option. And so, I accepted that day may have not been a good day, but I moved forward. I got a couple miles more. I kept going, and that's something that I could take as a triumph for that day.
That's so great. When you're out there those long days, it's almost like what you're facing to kind of win the day is much smaller, right? It's like food, water, get where I need to go, shelter, and it's just simple.
It's so simple, and it's so wonderful to only worry about those things, and just to think about, in my hip belt, I'm going to get to this viewpoint, and I'm going to eat that Snickers, and that's your joy for the day. That's the little thing that you get excited about.
That's the day. That's so good. Now, I've got another question for you here. This question can totally just be, have no answer. But if you could change anything about your hike, as far as like decisions you made, or just fill in the blank, was there anything you would change about it?
I think the right answer would be to say no. But if I could tell someone what I would have done if I had thought about it, those viewpoints, you can look them up any day of the season. Take a picture with you and your trail family in them. I look back and I am very thankful for the videos and the pictures I do have. Not everything, like me dancing with Mango. I don't have a picture, don't have a video, don't have a song that I remember, but I have that memory and I'm okay with that. But there are some of those viewpoints that I wish I had pictures of. But when you're out there, the way that you perceive things is completely different. Your mind slows down. So when you're sitting, I remember sitting at a shelter with Mango, Food Sack, and Blue Jeans, and Rock. He was there too. He'd come in late. And we found a Hemingway book. And I felt like the biggest hippie. I was barefoot, sweaty and gross, somewhere in New Jersey, around at a shelter. And we were reading out loud Hemingway. And that, we actually had a discussion about what we read about. I can't remember what portion it was, but we sat around a campfire and just talked about a book.
And those kind of, like I said, those kind of things can really only happen on the trail with that kind of group, So that's so good.
It was wonderful. Yeah. And your perception of time and reality and memories and appreciation slows down, especially when you're around people, because at least I felt like I did everything I could to really take in the moments. Even at 3 a.m. when I would hear Mango's Snickers bar crumbling because he's a night eater, or Blue Jeans would have an emergency blanket on. I swear it sounded like a bag of potato chips.
So loud.
So loud. You know, the practicality of it, I appreciate it, but man, I would nudge and be like, "You want to share your chips with me, huh?" Like, and of course, those silly things are a lot funnier out there. And I take in those moments a lot more, and I that's another type of perspective that I'm trying to carry on after trail. Is when I'm with people, I try and immerse myself in the moment, and I feel like a lot of people don't do that. And those times and those memories with people, like I said, all you have to do out there is think. And so when you get to the shelter of those people, it's amazing. The smell of a campfire was always coming in last. And I learned to appreciate it because I always knew I was about to be in the shelter because I could smell the campfire and it felt like I was coming home. And that was, it is one of my favorite smells now.
Yeah. Throughout so many of your answers, Nova, there's been a link of the people that made your journey so special. And I think that's just such a great reminder for everyone, whether it's hiking or other portions of our life, the people are really the ones that make it what it is.
And having that experience of being alone, I can probably, besides staying in hostels, I can remember probably about 4 or 5 times where I was actually with people in shelters. For that, it was 704 miles. I was pretty much alone. And I just, having that experience alone, it made me realize I am sure of myself. I am sure of my steps. But having the people there was what challenged me to think harder, and that was more important to me because the physicality of the trail, it's brutal. It is. You put your body through hell and back, but the mental fortitude it takes it seems nearly impossible. Some days you just want to sit and just cry, or just I've seen people break trekking poles over trees. It just happens.
Yeah. Well, Nova, I really appreciate, the thoughtfulness that you've put into your answers, and then even your hike. I think that's one of the main reasons that I wanted to talk with you about your journey. So thank you for that. And to kind of round us out, we'll kind of take a less serious note just for fun. How about your favorite kind of trail food or meal, and then worst thing you ate on your hike?
So what's surprisingly actually very good is peanut butter and Twizzlers. I eat a lot of that. It is actually
new. Really just straight up
pretty great because I survived when it was cold. I ate peanut butter all the time. It was wonderful, and I would put Twizzlers with it. And it sounds kind of gross, but it actually, everything sounds kind of good on trail.
Like in a tortilla or just out of the jar?
No, just spoonful of of peanut butter and
Okay.
Twizzlers and just hand in hand. And I'm trying to think the worst thing I had on trail. I think I got this. I do know what it is. It's I can't remember the company name of it, but it was beer cheese macaroni. And I thought it sounded delicious. Like macaroni sounds delicious. It was awful. It was the worst thing I've ever had. It definitely was not made to be made instantly. And it was just like a slush of it was a terrible cheese.
So it wasn't like a backpacker meal. It was just like a random grocery store thing.
Backpacker meals had my heart, and I never bought one because I got gifted them all the time.
Yeah.
And so beef stroganoff was amazing, chili mac, amazing, and so I've never had a bad Mountain House meal. Or Good to Go's. They've all been very great. Maybe sometimes a little spicy, but they've just been the ones that are instant pastas that I've tried. This sounds good. And I'm like, that's
and it
terrible.
Doesn't turn out
it's
good.
Absolutely awful. It's like a slush. Terrible.
So bad. Right on. Well, Nova, thanks so much for spending time today to talk about your journey. And I know that our listeners get so much out of what you shared. So thanks so much and take care.
I appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye. Well, I think it's safe to say that I got pretty lucky getting to interview Nova for this week's show. She's just incredibly thoughtful and has a great philosophy around hiking and the Appalachian Trail. So I really enjoyed her stories. It's a great reminder that no matter what trail we're on in our lives, whether that's one in the woods or somewhere else, that it really is the people that make it so special and make all the difference. So moving forward, I'm hoping to have some interviews with folks that are currently on the trail now, or hostel owners, or people that do trail magic, just anyone involved with the AT and other long distance trails. We've got some ambitious goals lined up to get some folks on the show, and some of them may work out, some of them may not, but we're going to give it our best shot. So thanks for bearing with me. And if anyone has any thoughts for ideas for the show, or people they'd like to be on the show, or maybe would be a good fit for what we're doing with the show, please send them my way. My email will be in the show notes. That is enough from me. I'm going to pass it over to Steve now, who is going to catch up with Katie Westling, or Phoenix, who is currently on the AT right now.
So we are on with Katie again. Hey, Katie, how are you?
Hi, Steve. Fine, thanks.
And you're off the trail again. You're off the trail. You're actually at the NOC. I know that right now, and I know you've had some pretty bad weather. I want to talk about the weather in a minute. But what about that climb down into the NOC?
I would describe it as both crushing and beautiful.
Talk me through crushing.
Okay, well, at one point I had to remove my pack and put it on this huge cube-shaped boulder and squeeze through a little crack, then put my backpack back on. But I could definitely feel my knees coming down that descent. But
it's surprising, isn't it? It is surprisingly dangerous. I know that I was hiking with a family last year, and the Malones for a little while, and they had these 4 kids, and one of the girls was walking backwards down there, and I think they nearly lost her over the edge. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Oh, no.
But it's a beautiful run down, isn't it? But you came down in bad weather, didn't you?
Well, it was okay. The weather yesterday was lovely,
Right.
but then as the evening went on, it started to deteriorate, and it's been raining all day today. So, and it's supposed to, the shelter just out of NOC, it's supposed to get really quite cold tonight.
Right.
But thinking about that descent yesterday, that was just, you're always aware that you're at the edge of the mountain.
Yes, it was a rude awakening to me in 2019. I didn't remember it like that at all when I first did it. My gosh, it was quite something. So you're in the NOC, which is a great place to stay. Where are you actually staying in the NOC? Where are you staying?
Well, last night I stayed at base camp, which is just it's just a little tiny room with a bunk bed.
Uh-huh.
And then tonight, they didn't have room there for tonight. So tonight we're in, I think it's called, I'm not sure what it's called, but it's like part of the motel.
All right.
So staying in a room there. And
Right.
then this is all the weather's supposed to pass tomorrow. Or tomorrow, like after midnight. So
Right.
we'll be up again, heading out tomorrow and going into up to Sassafras Gap Shelter, probably beyond. There's a little campsite just a little ways down the other side of the mountain. So we're thinking that the cold won't be so bad if we just go down a
Good luck with
bit
that.
of elevation.
Good luck.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, good luck with
Yeah.
that. I've been reading a few things on Facebook about some of the shelters have been really crowded. Have you found the crowd, or is it as crowded as you expected? What's it like out there?
Right. I think it's been several days along the trail since I've stayed in a shelter, at a shelter. I haven't actually even stayed inside the shelter yet.
Yeah.
I've stayed either camping near the shelter,
Sure.
or going further along and staying at one of these little stealth sites that are just off of the trail.
Oh, really?
And that's kind of nice. You don't have the huge crowds, and it's, that's kind of nice. I like that. But so I'm thinking, of course, in the Smokies, I think we have to stay in the shelters.
Yes.
Unless they're full. So, now that I've got my second vaccine, I feel pretty good that, about doing that, and that'll be fine.
Well, I think when we last spoke to you, you said you were going to try to make it to the NOC before you got off of the vaccine. So
exactly.
what happened?
Sure. So hiked a little further and then started looking at what the forecast was going to be. My plan was that I would have hiked forward into NOC, and then that would be my starting point.
Yes.
But again, the weather deteriorated. It was several hikers with me. We were just shivering and really bad. And so we were able to get a shuttle out of Tellico Gap, and that set me up for, I had to get a car and get off trail to go get my vaccination back in Virginia. And anyway.
So what's it? I mean, we've talked about this. I think it was last week, maybe it was the week before, where your hike's been kind of truncated in many ways by stop, start, and so on. And you had another stop again. Now you got another start again. Is this it? I mean, you got any other? There are no other plans to get off. Obviously, the weather is a different thing entirely.
No other plans.
Right.
Yeah, that I will say this. It took a day to drive up, 2 days. One to get the shot. And,
sure.
Stay with family, make sure I didn't react to it, and then the day driving back. And for me, it was really difficult. I was ready to get back on, but it was strange. I did not have my balance. Of course, I had a full pack coming down into NOC.
Just what you need, no balance coming down that bloody
right.
walk.
But all that, the confidence and the balance that I had developed over the last 3 weeks, I felt like it was, I was really challenged. I was really having to concentrate to watch where I was placing my feet, just paying attention to that. And overall, it felt like a real physical struggle, whereas before, I mean, I've done several 12-mile days that felt really good. So
yeah, I think any time off the trail is kind of unbalancing. I took 3 days off in it was in New Hampshire, I think it was, maybe it was Maine, towards the end of my hike in 2019. When I came back on, while I was delighted to be going back on, and I was really well looked after because I wasn't feeling very well, that as you say, that confidence you've built up over a number of miles, it kind of deserts you pretty quickly, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It sure did. So that's why I say it was a crushing hike yesterday, but the weather was warm and there were wildflowers everywhere.
Nice.
So, but I'm sure this weather is probably going to knock them back some. But
so, are you hiking with some other people?
Yes, I'm hiking. I have a partner I'm hiking with now. We've agreed through the Smokies for sure, and her name is Solitaire, and
she's
very nice woman.
She's giving light to Solitaire straight away.
and hiked with her and her son. He ended up going back home. He hiked, through Tellico Gap,
right.
But was ready to get back home. And so we're going to just kind of support each other through the Smokies, make sure that we're successcul there. So
that's cool.
I think it's a smart way to do it.
And what is you obviously speak to other hikers as well. What's the morale like? Are people dropping out because they're getting fed up with the weather, or are people braving it out?
You see a lot of people hanging around with backpacks, in the rain and under the eaves and, trying to get rooms. And, but then again, I see some, a young woman, probably in her early 30s. She was going through it today. She was heading on up in there.
Wow. Good for her. Good for her.
I think for me, it's better not. You cannot beat the trail, and in my mind, it's better to not. I don't mind challenging myself, but I do realize that it's going to take me a couple of days to just get that balance and confidence back. So
and then the Smokies will knock it out of you.
Yeah, right. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to the Smokies.
It's great. It's great.
We've got 3 days to Fontana, and then we're ready to start. And
that's cool.
Have my permit. Got my permit today, and really looking forward to it, because one thing, the weather is, at least for the first 5 days, is supposed to be really nice.
That's lovely.
Highs close to
nice.
50.
Perfect.
Lows in the 30s. Not bad at all.
And how's your gear working out? Okay.
Yes, I think right now. So when I was back up in Virginia, I did add some things to it. I added, so it's now a little bit heavier, but I think it's smarter. I added another base layer top, 250 Merino. So I feel like it's, if I need, if I'm wet and I need a dry piece of base layer on, I've got that. And I did add some hand warmers, those little, the activated.
Yes, it's funny actually. You forget how cold it can be, but when it is cold, oh my gosh, you can really feel it so badly, can't you?
Yeah. I did that, and I added a thicker pair of socks to sleep in, so that if we're up there and the temps drop way down, then I feel like I'll be okay.
Yeah. Well, look, next week, in a week's time, when I'll speak to you next week, you will be able to talk to me about 7 days hiking. First time we would have done that. You'll probably be partway through the Smokies. So I suspect you'll be in Gatlinburg at that stage as well. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we made. That'll be 7 days, so we may take a zero in Gatlinburg. I don't know. We're gonna find out.
Yeah, enjoy it. You're right. You're absolutely right. Don't take on this hike. You've got to get your rhythm going again, and once you've got your rhythm going, let the hike come to you. Don't try to take it on.
Yeah.
Okay. All right then. Well, good to talk to you, and I'm glad you're excited still, and you still sound up, which is a great thing. The day will come when I call you, you're going to sound really pissed off, but you know what? That'll be okay. I'll make you laugh, so it'll all be good.
Yeah.
All right. Take it easy then.
All right, Steve. Thanks.
Cheers.
Okie doke.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Now, I hadn't expected to be doing anything other than chatting with Katie, but I couldn't let you all go without thanking those of you who've continued to support our shows financially. I kind of thought there might be a drop-off, but we've had new donations. So quickly, thanks this week go to monthly donors Michelle Brown, another one of the ladies I met at the Woods Hole weekend, and Ann Dobson. Then Jens Lipperheider, Anne Hinton, who wrote me a lovely email, Thomas Dillinger and Jessica Lang Wright all made a donation from the Hiking Radio Network website, where they clearly clicked on the donate button. I'm so pleased to learn that people still want these shows to continue. And what about Ryan today and his guest, Cass? It's funny, I think that he got more from her than I would have, probably because he can relate to her age better. It was interesting for me to listen to his style as I was editing, and I'm not just saying this, I promise you, but I thought he did a masterful job. Unlike me, he knows where to shut up and listen. Great stuff, Ryan. By the way, before I go, I thought you might like to know that the show I'll be doing later this month will be a full show, with an interview, a chat with Katie, and another chapter in Larry Luxemburg's book. And so, to paraphrase myself, Ryan will see you next week.